Noche Embrujada, your horror channel. Good night everyone, but before we go to the video, I ask you to give me a like to strengthen the channel, and subscribe so I can bring you more stories. Now then, let's go to today's story, which is from a policeman, and this story is confidential. And as several years have passed since this event, this policeman decided to tell us his story. And it happened in the city of Batim, which is in Brazil, and it was in the year 2007, when he was 33 years old. And it all started like this. One day I was driving around the city's neighborhoods with my partner, and it was around 1 o'clock in the morning, until suddenly the radio from the military police headquarters warned that my police partner and I would have to go to a neighborhood to settle a family dispute. As soon as we arrived in the area, we saw that it was a rural area where the fight was taking place, that it was on a rented farm, and we stopped there in front and started talking to those involved in the confusion. And we learned that a young man who had mental problems fought at this party and ended up hitting some people in his own family. As this young man was upset, ended up running into the middle of the woods and fled. But with that, we didn't know what to do, but we ended up going after this suspicious boy because we didn't know how crazy he was, and he could end up doing something wrong. So we started up the police car and went looking for this crazy guy in the woods in the area, and we passed several dirt roads, but on a certain road, I saw by the light of the police car's siren something crouching fast in the middle of the bush, and right then, I warned my partner. So we decided to stop there and see what it was that was hiding in that thicket, and as soon as we stopped the vehicle and got out of the car, we grabbed the flashlight to light up the place and went into that thicket where that figure was hiding. And when I shone the light of the flashlight on a certain place in the thicket, I saw some kind of strange creature, because although this animal was on all fours, I was startled by its appearance, because you could see that its head was like a man's, but its body was like a dog's, and I was frightened to see it. Then my partner saw it too, and this creature was staring at us. I even thought it was going to come at us, because it looked like it was going to attack us. And the animal's yellow eyes were surreal, because they glowed so brightly that they looked like two very strong yellow lights, and seeing danger, I took action at that moment, and when I went to put my hand on my revolver to pick it up, surprisingly that animal got up and stood like a man. Then I was amazed at what I saw, because this creature was all hairy and had human arms, and we were about 10 meters away from this creature, and at that time, it already came to my mind that this animal, without a shadow of a doubt, it was a werewolf. And I was even thinking about not shooting this beast, but I couldn't do it, because while I was walking backwards, to avoid a confrontation with this beast, this werewolf came running up to my partner, who already had his gun in his hands. And it was at that moment that I started shooting at this beast, and my partner also fired several shots, and that werewolf ended up falling right there in the middle of the woods. Anyway, we were a bit disoriented about what to do at that moment, so we went over to the creature, and we saw this animal lying there on the ground practically dead, and what we decided to do was get back in our car to see how we were going to solve this problem. But we were already inside the police car, and we didn't say anything to the police about what had happened. After an hour, we called the deputy and managed to convince him that it was a confidential matter, and that not many people could know about it. But after 40 minutes the deputy arrived at the place where we were, and he saw that werewolf lying dead on the ground. Well, he called several contacts, and our chief of police warned us that no one could know about this story, and the deputy also said that he would sort it out. And although I was very surprised by what I had faced, I was relieved, because this story, I might have to give a lot of explanations. But soon, some coroners arrived on the scene, who seemed very happy to examine the werewolf's body, and the deputy told me and my partner to get out of there to rest, because he was going to take over the case, and he asked us not to talk about the werewolf with anyone. So we went back to our houses, and when I got home, I thought about what had happened to me, and about having met that werewolf, and I realized that this creature is real. 2 days later, I called my policeman partner, because he had helped me shoot that werewolf, and we talked about it, if anything could come of it, and we also talked about the fight that had taken place at the farm, and the crazy man who ran away. And my partner began to suspect that the crazy man might be suspected of turning into that werewolf. So a few days passed, and my partner and I went back to the police station to go to work. When we got there, we went to see the deputy who had been with us on the day of the werewolf, and talking to him about the creature, the deputy told us that it really was a werewolf, and that an order had been given to destroy the body of that animal, and that this matter had to be kept quiet. Of course, my partner and I didn't believe this deputy, because the way the coroners were working that day with the body of that werewolf, it seemed that the monster was worth a lot, as if it were something rare. Weeks went by after that event, and I went back to the place where I shot that beast, but I couldn't get any clues as to where that creature had come from, or what it was doing in that region, and then I went to the farm, where I went to resolve the family dispute, and I wanted to find out about that crazy man who ran away from the party, but I didn't find anything either, because it was just a ranch, this place that people rented to have parties. I don't know if he had anything to do with the werewolf, and we didn't file a police report about this story, because it was something secret, and I didn't have any information about the madman's family. But the point of all this is that these werewolves do exist, and they do walk around at dawn, so be careful. If you liked the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Fear Zone, your channel of real horror stories. And now, let's go to today's account, which is from Mr. Pedro, and this happened to him in the city of Marília, which is in Brazil, and at that time, that was in the year 2001, Mr. Pedro was 45 years old. And today I'm going to tell, when I came across head-on, the werewolf who attacked several ranches in my town. And it all starts like this. I work as a delivery man for vegetables and fruits for the verjos of the city, and sometimes I make deliveries of loads of chickens as well, and I have a truck to do this kind of service. One day, I went to make several deliveries of loads of chickens in a neighboring town, and so I stopped my truck in several places that day, making the deliveries of the load of chickens, and when I finished the service, which was already the night, I ended up coming back at my house. With that, I was resting for a while and watching TV in the living room, and soon I slept. However, when it was close to midnight, I woke up and decided to wash the bucket of the truck to take away the smell of chicken. So I went to my backyard, which was a ranch, with shed in the back where I kept my vehicle. Well, I climbed into the body of the truck and began to remove the empty wooden boxes, and this, when I looked at the bush next to the fence of the ranch, I saw something moving in the thicket, but as it was very dark, the vegetation, I could not see what it was. Of course, I was already on alert and looking around the bush, trying to see what that was. Even so, I kept working, removing the boxes from the top of the truck, and after a few minutes, suddenly, I heard some footsteps of something running near my truck. I went to look, but I stayed on top of the vehicle, and this I saw a creature hiding behind the head of my truck. I was startled, because it seemed to be the kind of huge dog, and his eyes were lit, and it was just watching me. I was surprised all this, for this animal was hiding from me, and it seemed that this animal was waiting. for me to come down from the back of the truck so that it could attack me. With that, I did a test and pretended to get off the body of the truck, but to my surprise, the animal saw me, and he came out from behind the head of the truck and came running at me. However, I went back to the bucket, but the animal almost caught me. At this point, I was startled, but I looked around the truck, and the beast was already gone. Of course, I was worried about my family. I had to solve this quickly, and while I was thinking about what to do, suddenly, I heard a noise in the body of the vehicle, and when I looked, I was startled, because that beast had managed to climb fast in the body, and came running towards me. At this time, I jumped out of the bucket of the truck, and fell to the ground in a bad way, and when I went to get up to run, my leg was bruised, and I don't know if I had broken my leg, but my foot hurt a lot, but there was no way. I started running and went to hide in the back of the shed, and turned off the light of the place, and then I hid behind some boxes. Well, I didn't understand why the creature didn't chase me. I looked at the back of the truck, and I saw this creature standing, only on two legs, as if it were a man. Then I was more afraid, because for me, this beast was a werewolf. The fact is that this monster was pushing the wooden boxes from the body. Maybe he thought that there was some chicken on top of the truck because of the strong smell of chicken. And this, I kept thinking that luckily, because werewolf did not come after me when I ran away from him, because my leg was bruised because of the fall when I fell from the top of the truck. Looking again at the body of the vehicle, the werewolf got out of the bucket of the vehicle and disappeared, and as I could not see him, I began to worry about my family. And with that, I acted fast and took courage, and even limping with my leg, I ran to the cab of the truck and started the vehicle, and with the light of the headlight, I saw the creature walking standing near the door of my residence. I was afraid and frightened, because the door of my house was just leaning. I turned the vehicle in the direction of the creature, and with the light of the headlight, the creature was startled, and it got on four legs, and ran to the back of the ranch. At that moment, my dogs realized that something was wrong on the property, and they showed up. I got out of the cab of the vehicle, and ran to my house, kept calm, and told my wife that it was just an animal that invaded our ranch, and that nothing had happened, and that I only twisted my foot, but warned my wife that such a beast might still be in the yard. However, I took my shotgun and went into the living room, and sometimes I would look out the crack in the window, trying to find this creature, and I would shoot with the shotgun if I saw this werewolf, for he had made me angry, for he had surrounded the door of my house. Well, the hours went by, and the werewolf no longer appeared in my place, and soon the day cleared, and so I was more relaxed. Eventually, I became concerned that this creature was prowling my region at night, and that creature could kill anyone who crossed its path. So, I had to do something. I took my shotgun and various ammunition, and together with a neighbor, who was a friend, we went into the thicket to find the clues that led to this creature. Prowling through the woods, we saw a man sitting under a tree, and this stranger was passing some bandages on his arm, for he seemed wounded. We got close to this suspect, but he saw us, and this man went into the bushes of the woods quickly and disappeared. I was unhappy with that, for I was going to warn him of the creature, but then I saw a little blood on the ground, and it sure was from that suspicious man. After that we walked some more, but there was no clue of the creature, and with that my neighbor and I decided to go back to our houses, and we went back. At this I passed near a place, and saw an old redneck bandaging his dog. I knew this gentleman, and asked what had hurt his dog. The old man told us that he woke up to the noises of his two dogs fighting with something. Then he looked quickly out the window, and in this he saw a strange animal inside his chicken coop. so the old redneck went to get his gun, but when he came out in the yard, the animal was already gone, but then he saw his dogs injured from having faced the bizarre creature. Well, at that moment I thought of the wanderer in the woods. Because he was wounded, I asked this gentleman, who could be a man who had entrance in his yard, and the old man confirmed that it was an animal indeed. Of course, after that conversation, I went back to my house, but turning on the clues, I kept calculating that maybe that injured guy from the thicket was the werewolf that came into my ranch, and I may be right, because the suspect who was injured, I didn't see this man anymore. And it could be that the wanderer, turned into a werewolf, was injured by the old man's ranch dogs. However, the years have passed, but when I make truck deliveries, I stay alert when it is a load of chickens, and I leave my gun in the bag, because the smell of the birds attract the werewolf. Good guys, thanks for watching the video. If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, and also turn on the Tinkerbell notifications to receive new videos of creepypasta werewolf, werewolves, scary stories werewolves, true horror stories, audiobook werewolves, tales prevails, encounters werewolves, dogmen, skinwalkers, and more. Fear Zone, your channel of horror stories. Good evening everyone, and now, let's go to today's report, which is from Mr. Marcos, and this happened to him in the city of Uberaba, which is in Brazil, and at that time, which was in the year 1993, Mr. Marcos was 27 years old. And today I'm going to talk about what happened to me on a certain night where I had more than a simple encounter with a werewolf, and I unraveled the mystery of this creature and want to know how it happened, so leave your like and subscribe to the Fear Zone channel. Now let's move on to today's story. And it all starts like this. At that time, a few years ago, I lived with my parents on a ranch, which was in a rural village in my city, but as I was still young, I went out a lot at night in the city to enjoy the dances and ballads with my friends. But also, my father had a pickup truck where I worked for my family to make deliveries of vegetables and fruits through the markets of the city. But what happened on a certain weekend was that I went to a dance through the center of the city, and so I stayed in this place having fun, and when it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, I saw that an acquaintance of mine who lived near my neighborhood was at the party, but this guy, he was already leaving with his car. In this, I talked to this acquaintance of mine for him to take me away, for at this time it was raining heavily, and so then I managed to get a ride with this boy. After we drove through some streets, as soon as I arrived in my neighborhood, where the streets were dirt, this friend of mine who drove the car did not want to enter these roads because his car could get stuck in some mud puddle of these dirt roads because of the rain, and it got muddy these streets. Well, I understood this problem, and I got out of the car right there and thanked my friend. Next, I took my way and started walking on foot so I could get back to my house. With that, I was walking along a dirt road, and when I got about 200 meters away from my house, I saw a truck stopped on the street bed. I thought it was strange. That vehicle stopped in that deserted place, but underneath this vehicle, and I saw a figure, like a lying animal. Maybe it was hiding from the rain. Anyway, I was on alert and went to the other side of the sidewalk, but as soon as I was passing near the truck, I realized that this beast came out of there from under the vehicle. And as soon as I turned around to look at this animal, I was startled because it was already about 3 m away from me, and I realized that this beast was going to attack me. Luckily, I quickly grabbed a large black garbage bag, which was on the sidewalk of the street, to defend myself, and as this animal came upon me to attack me, I began to beat this animal with the garbage bag. But something happened, for this creature managed to grasp the garbage bag with its claws, as if it were a person, and when I noticed, this animal was already standing, and trying to take the garbage bag out of my hands, so that it could attack me, and I was surprised to see that strange beast balancing on two legs, and at this time, I began to call for help in the street, and the dog of the houses began to bark fiercely. But out of nowhere this creature stopped its attack of rage, and it went back to being in four paws, and then this werewolf began to choke on its own, and it seemed that he was going through some crisis. I took a good look at this creature, and he kept prowling around me, but soon after, what happened was that this werewolf began to have more seizures, and it seemed that he was choking, and I seeing this beast in this state, which appeared he was going to start vomiting, with that I took advantage, and I started running to get away, and when I looked back quickly, I saw this creature running on its feet like a person, and it went into the bush and disappeared. To me, this creature was certainly a werewolf, for he looked like the kind of deformed black dog, but he stood like a person, and his eyes were frightening, for they were lit like lights. The fact is, I managed to get away from the werewolf, and as soon as I got to my house, and it was already around 4 o'clock in the morning, and since my house had some wire fences, I was still very worried that werewolf would come to my house. Well, the time was passing, and the rain only increasing, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, I saw a guy coming out scared from the bush, in a vacant lot that had near my house. Strangely, he stood in the corner of the wall of the farm, and stared at the street, and seemed worried about something. Seeing the danger that this guy was going through, at that moment I took courage, and went in front of the house, to see if this guy needed any help, because for me, he was running away from the werewolf. But when I called this fellow, he looked at me, with frightened eyes. I warned this man that I had a huge animal prowling the neighborhood, and that it was good he was careful, and this man did not want to talk, and then he left the place quickly, and disappeared down the street. I left him there. But after a few hours, the day dawned, but I was still worried about this werewolf that appeared in my village. After a week or so passed, one day, I woke up 4:30 in the morning, because I had to make some deliveries of vegetables through the supermarkets in the city. So I started my pickup truck, and left my ranch driving the vehicle. After passing through several dirt roads, suddenly I saw a truck stopped on a dead-end street and near a site, and at that moment, I saw a naked man coming out of the woods, and he was running up to this truck, and I stopped my pickup truck near this dead-end street, but that suspicious guy saw me, so quickly, he hid behind that truck. At that moment, I was scared, because I remembered that this suspicious man was the same guy I saw near my house that day the werewolf attacked me. I was scared. I took a good look at that vehicle too, and I remembered that it was the same truck which was on the street near my house, in which the werewolf hid under this truck last week. I found this whole scene very strange, but I was on alert, and I left that place quickly, and along the way, I started to connect the clues, and I came to the conclusion that this suspect of the dead-end street was the werewolf. Of course, I was perplexed by this story that I went through with this creature. Then a few days, when I made my deliveries early in the morning, I always looked through the dirt streets to see if that man would be somewhere, but never again did I see this guy in my neighborhood, and neither did the truck, because I would report it to the police, because for sure the guy seemed to be doing wrong things in my neighborhood. And that day when the werewolf attacked me, I think as it was dawning the day, he started the process of becoming a man. Maybe that's why that werewolf started choking, and then he fled into the thicket. And what do you think? Was that naked man on the road the werewolf? Good guys, thanks for watching my story, and if you liked the story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next horror story.